The Kundalini. I thought it might be a little bit appropriate to raise the Kundalini right now at this moment and get it on video. Just thought it might be a bit interesting. What it is for me, once again, as I always say, I'm not 100% certain of any of this. Who knows if what is defined as a Kundalini experience is actually even a real thing. And if that thing is real, then who knows if what I have corresponds with that definition. The Kundalini for me these days, I would describe as a build-up of energy somewhere in my body, but also in the emotion, a build-up of an emotion. But it's something I don't necessarily always identify as being that thing that I classify as the Kundalini. And a lot of the time it's only when I get that release of energy, as I just did then for the camera. It's only then a lot of the time that I realize, oh yeah, I've been building up a lot of energy, and I did need to get rid of that energy, release that energy. It's something I can do these days almost on call, without meditating. If I was to get back into a regular routine of meditation and yoga, the Kundalini would overwhelm me. It would be too much. So for that reason, I haven't done yoga. I do yoga, a very simplified routine of yoga every now and then. But certainly meditation, it's something I haven't done in years. Ever since this thing happened upon me. I was probably in my mid to early 20s when I had what I then determined to be a Kundalini situation, Kundalini awakening, or a Kundalini emergency, as it's quite often referred to. Yeah, I was living away from home, just broken up with my long-term girlfriend. I'd uprooted myself. I'd finished 3 years of my degree, which was enough to I had the equivalent of a degree, even though I hadn't finished my course. So I had enough basically to get out there into the real world and see what it had to offer me, which wasn't much, unfortunately, as far as career-wise. So yeah, possibly all of this sort of came to a head, and yeah, it was just an intense experience, a terrible experience in a lot of ways. But on the other hand, it was sometimes amazing, incredible. It was a bit of a up and down roller coaster for a while there. It was something to look at me at the time you would never suspect all that I was going through internally. I remember that was one of the things that I wrote about at the time, that what I was going through internally was just so deep and so intense compared to how I must have appeared on the surface. So there were these rushes of energy which I started to get, rushes of inspiration, incredible experiences of inspiration, and it just got too intense for me. I stopped meditating, I stopped yoga, started ringing around to see who could help. I rang up a few yoga centers to see what opinion they would have. And for some reason back then, I had the opinion that they couldn't help me, that somehow the supposed explanation of this energy that people sometimes get through this Eastern Indian ideology, somehow I just knew that they couldn't help. I didn't even go to any of the yoga centers. I just spoke to people on the phone, and I just got the impression that it wasn't going to help, that it was something I had to get through myself, which I did in the end. But it was good to identify it as what is known to be the Kundalini. It was certainly a help to have that identification, that definition, to know that I wasn't just simply going crazy. It's actually quite a funny story how I discovered the Kundalini. I'd never heard of it, as a lot of people haven't, the Kundalini. I was sitting in a doctor's surgery waiting to go in. I was requesting a CAT scan of my brain. That's how bad it had gotten. I thought the only thing that could explain everything that I was feeling was something big that was going inside my brain. And the doctor, he gave, after he'd heard what I was going through, he actually agreed to give me the referral to get my brain CAT scanned. I didn't have a tumor, just a normal scan of a brain. But as I was sitting in that doctor's surgery waiting to speak to that doctor, I was reading a book which I brought along with me. It was a book that I'd borrowed from my auntie. She was into that kind of thing, yoga, and she had this book, and it was an interesting book, metaphysical type stuff. And at the end of the book, for some reason, they tacked on this weird chapter. Had nothing really to do with the rest of the book, and it was on the Kundalini. And I read this, and I was like, "Holy shit! This is what I've got." It all lined up. It was all there. The symptoms of the Kundalini, everything. It all made sense. And so I started reading up on that. I read Gopi Krishna's book and read some other books and started looking. Well, there wasn't much of an internet back then, but mainly books that I looked at to try to figure out the ins and outs of this. I even started doing phone sessions with a spiritual emergency therapist. and he was someone obviously who knew about the Kundalini. So that was an interesting experience, I suppose. Yeah, I guess what I wanted to mention during this video was the first time, thinking back, the first time that I ever had a Kundalini experience, and this description probably sums it up the best of what the Kundalini actually is, because it came on me. What I believe it is anyway, because it came on to this experience came on not during a yoga pose or a meditation or anything. It came to me during a genuine existential crisis or episode I was going through. Existential, I don't know what the word is, but I'll explain it. I guess I should say that, as with most people, I was brought up in a half-hearted attempt to, impose the Christian religion onto me. The ideals, the idea of a Abrahamic God, I think they call it, the God of Abraham, the original idea of God, which later evolved into the Christian God. And so yeah, I've for a long time I had this idea of this big father figure looking over me. And of course, as with most people, I went through a lot with that, with what that meant and so forth. And one night, as with a lot of people, at night time, as you go to sleep, you start thinking about God, either praying to him or just thinking in general. And one particular night I was sleeping, I was living in a garage at the time, and it was out the back of the property that my mother owned. It wasn't as if I couldn't afford to live in a normal house. I chose to live in that particular garage because it was really cool. And I remember just crying out to God that particular night. I can't remember the details of what I was crying out about, whether he was really there, or why would he not show me the way? What was my path, my destiny? But anyway, as I cried out to the heavens, to try to connect with whatever this idea was of God, I was just lying in the bed. It was probably, I don't know what time it was, but it was late at night. I usually stayed up pretty late in those days, when I was at university. And I was in the middle of this, mini crisis, lying on my bed just thinking about God. Are you really there, or why don't you help me, or what does it all mean? And it was just in the middle of this terrible state that I'd gotten myself into mentally, which occasionally I still get into. That this amazing sensation came over me, and it was the first time that I've experienced what I would identify as the Kundalini. It was this rush of energy, sudden rush of powerful, cleansing, amazing energy that begins at the base of the body somewhere. It's definitely a rush upwards. I'm not going to say that it's from the base chakra to the head chakra or whatever, but it's certainly a rush of energy that comes from deep down and rushes upwards and tingles the back of my head, I suppose, as it leaves my head. I don't know. I don't even know if I believe the Eastern take on what this energy is. I've heard that this energy can be brought on by even Christians in deep in prayer, which was a similar situation that I was in. I was deep in prayer with God, reaching out to Him, trying to get the two fingers to meet, and yeah, this incredible rush. It just came out of nowhere, lying in the bed. This incredible rush of energy that came over me, and it was just so intense and so amazing that it just shocked me. I was like, shit, where did that come from? Is this God? That was obviously my first impression of what it was, that God was looking down at me and got sick of my moaning and decided to send a bolt of lightning down to me to shut me up, to prove that He was really there, Yeah, so that was the first time I ever really had what I would describe as a Kundalini experience. And since then, so maybe a couple of years later after that, I had, probably about 3 or 4 years after that, I had the Kundalini emergency, as they like to call it, which really is little more than someone unsure of what's going on. That's really all it is, Someone unsure of what it is that's happening to them. I mean, they say that it's your chakras aren't ready for it and all that kind of stuff. But really, when it boils down to it, if people are told that other people have had this similar experience, people that are interested in spirituality and interested in yoga, meditation, or religion, intense, people that are very intense about their own particular religion, that it's quite common that these people get this spiritual emergency, whatever, and not to worry. And that would have helped me out a lot in the beginning, as that book finally did, which was just blind luck. Who knows what it was. Yeah, and so these days, what is the Kundalini for me? Well, I don't meditate anymore. I don't do that. I'm maybe very occasionally I will meditate, but I know that if I meditated, like for example, every day, like I used to try to do, then the Kundalini would become too much for me. So I don't do it anymore. But yeah, that's not to say that I don't get this build-up of energy within me, and then occasionally I need to release it, which I can do. It takes a couple of seconds, just sit on the end of the bed and do whatever I do to get that rush of energy up my spine. And once it's gone, once it's been released, I realize how much better I feel, and how much I really needed to do that. So yeah, for me, that's what the Kundalini is now. It's just a build-up of energy that needs to be released. And you get a lot of stories of people saying, "Oh, it's you're lucky to have the Kundalini," and this kind of thing. If anything, the Kundalini, this experience with the Kundalini has left me more cynical than anything, I guess you'd say, of spirituality and yoga and ancient texts and all this kind of stuff, which is funny. It's left me more cynical than anything. It's left me more determined to go it my own way, and to define my own path as far as my own philosophy on life. And I'd probably encourage anyone else who's taken a similar path to what I have to look at things in the same way. Do it your own way. Really, you're the only one who can make your own path. You can follow gurus and all this kind of stuff, but in the end, it needs to be you who does it. You're the one who knows what's best for yourself. So there it is. I don't think there's much else to add about the Kundalini. That's all I really wanted to say. I've been waiting to make this video for a long time. So I hope that really helps anyone who is having similar experiences. It would have been a huge help to me back then if I had have seen this kind of video. So yeah, there it is.